Evelyn Harper has spent her life bending to the will of others, silencing herself for the sake of family and peace. But when her daughter-in-law Samantha dismisses her at her own son's wedding, Ellen reaches a breaking point. What follows is a quiet but powerful act of defiance, throwing away the wedding dress that symbolized her years of suppression. This act of liberation sparks a journey of self-discovery, one that forces her to reclaim her voice and her place in the world. Along the way, she confronts her son, Aaron, and her own past, realizing that true freedom isn't about revenge, but about taking ownership of her own story. Through messy conversations, painful realizations, and moments of clarity, Ellen learns that the cost of reclaiming her power is high, but it's a cost worth paying. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. It was supposed to be a day of joy, but when she told me to shut up and stay in the kitchen, it was like everything crumbled. The sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the bridal suite, catching dust motes in the air like tiny flecks of gold. Outside, music from the rehearsal playlist drifted faintly through open windows, but inside, the tension clung to the room like static. I adjusted a centerpiece on the refreshment table, just slightly, instinctively, when Samantha swiveled sharply toward me. "Could you not touch things, Evelyn?" she said, voice sugar-coated but sharp. "We've got professionals for that." I smiled politely and stepped back. "Of course, just trying to help." She didn't respond, just turned away, already scanning the room for something else to correct. It was Aaron's wedding day, my only son, my miracle baby, and all morning I'd been searching for a way to feel included, needed even, but with every attempt offering a different boutonniere, suggesting a change in the seating chart, even fetching coffee, I was met with the same thin smile and dismissive nod from Samantha. Like I was a guest in a house I once built. "Evelyn, could you check on the buffet?" she asked as I walked past, not looking up from her phone. "Actually, never mind, just stay in the kitchen, okay? We've got this handled." The room fell quiet for half a second. My hands froze around a stack of cloth napkins. I looked up, unsure if I'd heard her right. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She was already on to the next detail, barking orders at the photographer. I didn't say anything. Not because I agreed, but because I knew if I opened my mouth everything would come pouring out, not just from today but from years of biting my tongue until it bled. I stepped out into the hallway and closed the door behind me, my pulse fluttering beneath my skin like trapped birds. The hallway was silent, cool. I wandered down to the dressing room, where Samantha's wedding gown hung from the tall oak mirror, lace sleeves, ivory silk, a row of delicate buttons trailing down the back like pearls. It was beautiful, and it mocked me. I reached out to touch the fabric, stopping short, my reflection caught in the glass, makeup touched up, dress perfectly pressed, earrings matching the corset. I looked like someone prepared for joy, but inside, I felt erased. I thought about all the times I'd stayed up late sewing Halloween costumes, the homemade birthday cakes with the crooked frosting, the soccer games in the rain, every moment spent making Aaron's world a little brighter. I wasn't even trusted to arrange place cards. I didn't expect to run the show, but I never thought I'd be benched at my own child's wedding. The door creaked behind me. I turned quickly, heart stuttering, but it wasn't Samantha, just the wind. Still alone. And yet not the same. Something inside me had shifted. Maybe it was the way she'd said it, so easily, like I was furniture, or maybe it was the quiet ache of knowing I'd accepted this kind of dismissal too many times in too many forms. I stared at the wedding dress again, shimmering in the light, untouched and waiting. Samantha's voice echoed in my head, "Stay in the kitchen." I breathed in deeply, and then something unexpected bubbled to the surface. Not anger, not quite, something deeper, older, a spark. A warning, a beginning. Samantha's laughter echoed faintly from down the hall. I stood there alone, eyes fixed on the dress, and for the first time that morning, I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. I've spent years being dismissed. Today I finally realized, no more. The bridal suite seemed smaller now, every ornate mirror and crystal sconce, a reminder of how I'd been pushed into the shadows. Samantha's earlier dismissal echoed in the silence. Stay in the kitchen. That phrase isn't just a command, it's a boundary drawn in your bone. And today I felt it bleed. Soft classical music drifted down the hall. I clenched my fists at my sides as I walked back toward the suite. No more. I wouldn't flinch again. Each step pulled me forward, tethered to a quiet resolve. The door cracked open. Samantha breezed out, hair pinned, perfect, and paused only to give me a sharp nod. Evelyn, the florist texted. They need confirmation on the aisle markers. Can you handle it? I opened my mouth, then closed it. I could let her continue, would let her simply for peace. But that piece had scars. I stepped forward, voice low but sure. Actually, I'd like to. I've been meaning to speak with them. She frowned. Surprise flitted across her face. I already told Jessica, I mean the coordinator. I stood straight, but I know Dad's favorite flower and I'd like it to be in front. Silence. Samantha's eyes narrowed, hands trembled just a breath. Fine, she hissed. Fine. But don't take charge. I closed the door behind me. She was still. I sat at the edge of the bed, heart still speeding. The wedding dress lay there, ivory and impossible. I reached out, tracing its lace fingertips skirting the fabric. Today it was more than a dress. It was a symbol of ceremony, of transition, of roles. I saw every moment I'd swallowed, unspoken suggestions at board meetings, hidden tears when I canceled plans to help someone else, rewritten recipes when someone demanded gluten-free cupcakes, quietly stepping back so others could step forward. Today the dress would witness something different. I stood and pulled the gown from the hanger. It slipped easily into my arms, weightless until I held it. Then it felt like gravity itself. In the mirror my reflection shifted. Mother, grandmother, woman, not budging, not shrinking. The door slid open again. Samantha stood there, arms crossed. She looked smaller now, her perfection anchored in insecurity. Evelyn breathed out. I'm going to the courtyard. She blinked. Why? To choose the flowers, I said, firm, calm. And to make sure the path is lined with the people you care about. Samantha hesitated, then stepped aside. Outside, the courtyard waited. White chairs, fresh petals, a delicate altar. The florist hovered by a bucket brimming with peonies and daisies. I approached her. Hi, I said. About the aisle markers. I'd love to talk options. Behind me, I heard Samantha enter the courtyard. She watched as I knelt next to the florist, measuring with ribbon, discussing proportions, tracing patterns with fingertips. It felt right. When unfun I stood, the ribbon curled golden in my hands. I didn't think of control. I thought of legacy, of moments held, of mothers past, and a mother reborn. A slight breeze picked up, and with it the scent of hope. I turned back toward the suite, and saw Samantha staring, mouth parted like she'd forgotten what to do with words. I nodded, and walked back inside carrying the dress and ribbon, carrying whatever I'd always given but never taken. My voice was steady. Let's do it this way. She looked at me, maybe for the first time, as an equal, a woman capable, and as I draped the ribbon across the dress, I didn't feel fear. I felt the thrill of beginning. Every step toward that dress felt like freedom, like a weight was lifting. My fingers brushed the soft lace at the hem as I stepped closer to the wedding gown. Each stitch shimmered in the morning light, and I felt it, an electric hum rippling through me. The dress had always been a symbol of a daughter-in-law's debut, another woman stepping forward, and me stepping back. But today it pulsed like something I could claim. When I slid the garment from its hanger, the silk rustled and I nearly trembled with anticipation. It had been donned, admired, and adored, never mine. Now it was mine to hold, to rearrange, to decide its fate. My grip tightened, fierce and gentle in the same moment. My pulse pounded in my ears as I carried the dress across the room, throat thick. My eyes locked on the door, my escape, but also my stage. Each slow step toward it carried years of little silences, disguised apologies, and swallowed suggestions. The dress felt lighter than I expected. Outside, the courtyard sun shone bright, white chairs neatly arranged under blossoming branches. Yet I stood in the doorway, dress billowing, heartbeat echoing against glass. This moment, fragile and taut, felt primeval. rooted deep in every memory of losing myself to make space for others. I swallowed, taking a sharp breath. I moved forward. Around me energy shifted. Air felt thicker. Time seemed to hesitate. I imagined every woman who'd ever been quieted for politeness, for peace, for love. I thought of mothers who'd vanished behind birthday banners, wives whose dreams had gone quiet, daughters told to be seen but not heard. Those memories glowed inside me, and I felt tears sting my eyes. They weren't tears of regret. They were embers of rage and reclamation. I reached the trash can, tucked under a folding table at the corner of the courtyard. Its lid was open, ordinary as hope. I paused, holding the dress there. I closed my eyes and breathed in the hum of petals, chairs, distant bird song. I felt entire, enough. With trembling hands, I lifted the bottom of the gown and then stopped, because this wasn't about destruction, it was about direction, about choice, not erasing, but So instead of tossing it, I folded the dress in slow, precise layers, kissing the lace, smoothing seams, honoring stitches. I tucked it into the cart beside the bin. I didn't run. I stepped away. Behind me, soft footsteps. Samantha. She rounded the corner, eyes wide, face drained of color. Her voice trembled. "What are you doing with my dress?" The words felt distant, reverberating through me like glass breaking. I looked at the folded fabric in the cart, and then at her. I saw fear flicker on her face, but I felt none of my. "You don't own it," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "Not anymore." She blinked, confusion rippling. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath. I stood firm, heart pounding with clarity. This wasn't rebellion, it was reckoning. This was me, taking back what I gave up, not for show, but for myself. Samantha's mouth opened, but no words came. The breeze rustled petals overhead, as the world paused between us. I squared my shoulders, clutching the dress in the cart. Today I realized I had spent a lifetime being polite. But now, I wasn't polite, I was free. Her anger flared, but for the first time I felt no fear, only control. Samantha's face paled when she rounded the corner, and saw the cart bearing the wedding dress. Her breath hitched, lips pressed tight. "What are you doing?" she demanded, voice taut as piano wire. I straightened, clutching the fabric. "I'm choosing. For the first time in years I'm choosing." She stepped closer. "You're ruining everything. My day, my wedding. How could you?" Her voice shook, raw anger exposed. "This isn't about you or your wedding." I set the dress down on a chair. My voice remained steady, controlled like a conductor leading an orchestra. "It's about me, about what I've given up, about a life vanished behind others' expectations." Samantha's lips quivered. "This isn't the time. You're acting like it's all about you, but this isn't your wedding. It's my life," I replied calmly. For years my voice has been the background music, nice to have, not necessary. Today I decided otherwise. She backed away, color draining. "You don't have to destroy me to find yourself." I crossed my arms. "I'm not destroying you, I'm showing you that I can stand." Samantha's eyes flashed. "You think this gives you power? You're stealing our moment." "It's our moment," I said firmly. For once Her gaze flicked to the door, then back to me. "You always think you get to decide everything." The words hurt, but they also freed something. "I've been planning to keep you out," she hissed. "Aaron and I talked through this. We don't need you in the future." The cart rattled as I released the dress. My chest tightened, awareness spiking. "You planned it? Exclude me from my son's life." She swallowed. "It was better this way." "You're too much." Silence pressed around us like a physical thing, slow and suffocating. I took a step forward. "I'm your son's mother," I said firmly, voice level, "and I'm every bit part of his life." Her tears came then, not sadness but bewildered fury. "You've made me feel like I'm not enough." "When did you become the gatekeeper?" I asked quietly. "Since when did motherhood come with a permission slip?" She pressed a hand to her mouth. Guests in nearby rooms paused. My words tore through quiet respect, leaving exposed nerves. I held her gaze. "I am enough. I always was. And I won't hide any more." Samantha's breathing came fast. Her eyes reddened. "You're delusional." "No." My voice firmed. Steel threaded through it. "I'm awake." The family began drifting closer. Aaron in his suit, looked between us, confusion shadowing his features, Lily anxious and proud, and even a few wedding planners and caterers whispering among themselves. Samantha spun toward them. "See, she's making this my fault." One of the coordinators stepped forward. "Ma'am, please." I raised my hand calmly. "No, this isn't about coordination, it's about clarity." I squared my shoulders. My silence cost me everything. "Not today." Samantha's rage collapsed into exhaustion. Her shoulders dropped. She whispered something. "You always win," and retreated. I watched her go, heart pounding. Then I turned slowly to the small crowd that had formed, faces of family, staff, distant relatives, eyes filled with conflicted empathy. The morning sun glinted off the dress, pinned on the chair behind me. I realized the stakes were higher than I'd ever expected. This was no longer a simple power grab or a mother's hissy fit. It was a reckoning, a redefinition. I inhaled deeply and met Samantha's retreating gaze. I didn't look away. I stood there, heart steady and clear, knowing I wouldn't back down, no matter how many doors she closed next. Without hesitation, I tossed the dress in the dumpster. It was my act of freedom. I clutched the half-full cart's handle, the ivory dress draped across it, weighty with intention. The halls had fallen silent behind me, guests en route to ceremony, chairs being arranged, flowers readied, everything rushing ahead as if I'd never staged this rebellion. I felt the eyes of the world pull away, leaving me alone, except for the echo of a choice made in the hush. The back doors stood open, midday sun pooling around the dumpster's metal mouth. Garbage bags rustled inside, sharp and indifferent. I wheeled the cart out, each push forward sounding louder in my bones. My heart pounded, not with fear, but fierce purpose. At the threshold I paused, breath catching. This moment felt like stepping off a cliff into a new sky. I looked down at the dress, its lace sparkling with fragile memories, and saw not a gown meant to dress someone else's dreams, but a symbol of every time I dimmed my own. I inhaled deeply. The air smelled of grass and distant blossom. I felt tears hot behind my eyes, but I blinked hard to keep them tethered. I had work to do. With both hands firm around the fabric, I hoisted the dress, and swung it hard over the dumpster's rim. It landed with a soft thud, fabric settling among crumpled boxes and wilted florist foam. The silk pooled in a silent surrender, then a strange kind of rebirth. I stepped back. My knees felt rubbery, but the weight in my chest had lifted, gone, blown away like dust on the breeze. I looked at the dumpster's yawning mouth, thinking of all that had happened in the rooms I'd walked away from, decisions ignored, suggestions overwritten, feelings pushed beneath the surface. And now, not one of them mattered as much as this. I felt calm, steady. My voice, though low, held an edge of triumph. It had to be done. There was no applause, no gasps, just the world humming back into place. Behind me, gravel crunched. My breath caught again. What have I done? I pivoted, expecting Samantha, Aaron, Lily, someone angry or hurt, but no one emerged. Just the muted hum of the ranch, the faint thrum of distant ceremony, the tilt of the sun. I started to walk away, away from expectations, whispers, the weight of being invisible again. My steps felt light. I opened the door back into the ceremony prep, imagining the chaos I'd left. Chairs misaligned, flowers missing, guests wondering why the dress was gone. But none of that mattered, because I was here now, choosing myself, letting go of more than lace and sequin. I inhaled again, a sharp, clean breath. For the first time in decades, I had broken the cycle. As I walked toward the main hall, I could feel the edges of my old life unraveling. The roles I'd adopted, dutiful mother, silent supporter, fluttered loose, drifted away, leaving space for boundaries, space for voice, space for me. But just as I stepped through the threshold, a voice, low, familiar, tremulous, cut the air behind me. "You'll regret this." I froze, shoulders squared but stomach tight. I hadn't expected this. Not a threat, not remorse, not the final knot of doubt. I didn't look back. Not yet. I stood there, heart steady, pulse ringing in my ears. I had made my stand. Now I'd have to face what came next. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I had made my choice. I turned, Samantha stood at the edge of the gravel path, arms stiff at her sides, cheeks flushed with fury, her eyes locked on me like I was a trespasser in her life. The wind tugged at the edges of her silk robe, but her body didn't move. Not yet. You threw it away. Her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the pressure of holding back too much. You really did it. I said nothing, not out of guilt, but because anything I said now would come from the marrow. And marrow doesn't rush. She walked closer, one step at a time, each footfall sharper than the last. You think this was brave? This was cruel. You hijacked my wedding, my day, and for what? To make a point? No, I said quietly. To make a choice. Samantha's mouth twisted. You humiliated me in front of my family. You've always needed attention, but this is psychotic. I didn't flinch. I needed to matter. I've spent years disappearing, and when I finally stood still, you called it sabotage. You're selfish, she spat. Spiteful. Just a bitter old woman who couldn't handle letting go. I blinked slowly, keeping my voice even. I've let go of a lot. Dreams, opinions, parts of myself. And what did it get me? A kitchen corner. A seat behind the real decisions. Today I did what I should have done long ago. I claimed something back. A pause, sharp and cold. Then Aaron's voice. What happened? He approached Ty half done, eyes scanning the space between us like it was a crime scene. Samantha turned to him, trembling. She threw my dress in the dumpster. She ruined everything. His face paled. Mom, is that true? I looked at him and my chest ached. He still had that boyish uncertainty, that want to fix without choosing sides. But there were no sides anymore, just people. And truth. I didn't ruin your wedding, I said, but I refused to let it erase me. Aaron raked a hand through his hair. Why now? Why like this? Because I couldn't stay silent one more day, I answered. I was drowning in it, and no one noticed. He looked at Samantha, then me. Couldn't you have talked to us? I smiled, but it was hollow. Talking assumes someone's listening. The silence that followed was heavy. Samantha folded her arms tightly, jaw set. You've made your point. Congratulations. But don't expect a toast or a thank you. I nodded. I didn't do it for applause. People were watching now. Cousins in pastel dresses whispering behind hands. An aunt shaking her head slowly. Someone's child tugging at a boutonniere. I could feel the cold starting, the slow freeze of family turning, unwilling to take sides, but quietly exiling the troublemaker. My hands itched with it, but I held my ground. Aaron stepped closer, eyes softer now. Mom, are you sure? Is this really the path you want to take? I looked at my son, the man I raised, the boy I tucked in 1,000 nights, and felt the weight of every closed door behind us. I took a breath, and with all the steadiness I had left, I met his eyes and didn't blink. The silence from my family was deafening, but I couldn't go back. The house was too quiet. 3 days after the wedding, I found myself moving through rooms like a ghost, present but uninvited. The congratulatory flowers from guests had already begun to wilt on the kitchen counter. The leftover cake sat untouched in the fridge. No one called, no one came, and I didn't expect them to. Samantha had gone cold the moment I refused to apologize. Aaron, caught between loyalty and discomfort, offered nothing more than a strained nod when I passed him in the hallway of their rental. They left early for their honeymoon. No fanfare, no farewell. Lily texted once, thinking of you, call when you're ready. But I wasn't ready. Not for calls, not for pity. The ache sat deep in my chest, not sharp like regret, but dull and weighty like a stone lodged in the soil, unmoving. I spent hours walking the perimeter of the garden behind my little home, just me and the wind, and the whisper of weeds poking through the brick path. There was something cleansing about the solitude, even as it pressed heavy on my shoulder. One night I sat with a glass of wine by the window, the moon pulling silver shadows across the floor. I stared at the photos on the mantel. Aaron as a boy, his arms slung around my neck, a Christmas where I wore that red sweater he hated. The smile on his face then had felt easy, effortless. I whispered aloud, Did I lose you? No answer. Just the creak of the old pine outside as it bent with the breeze. The next morning I stood at my closet with a suitcase on the bed, hands folded tightly. I couldn't explain it even to myself. I just knew I had to go, not far, just away, somewhere quieter than this hollow silence they'd left behind. I packed jeans, a jacket, my hiking boots, tossed in a notebook, and a copy of the novel I never finished reading. I didn't leave a note. If they wanted to reach me, they knew. And still, something twisted in my stomach as I zipped the suitcase shut. Had I gone too far? Had I become what they always feared, a woman too loud, too proud, too unwilling to bend? But then I thought of that dress, crumpled in the dumpster, stripped of power, and remembered the relief that followed. That brief moment where the world felt wide open again. I hadn't acted from malice. I had acted from need. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is upset the balance that's been killing you. I grabbed my purse, slung the suitcase down the hall, and turned off the lights one by one. My house didn't blink. It waited. I opened the front door, wind curling around my ankles like an omen. And then, footsteps. I turned. There, on the front walk, stood Aaron. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair messier than I'd ever seen it. He looked older, tired, but his face held something else, something unfinished. "Are you leaving?" he asked, voice low. I didn't answer. "Not yet." He glanced at the suitcase, then back at me. "Can we talk?" I stood in the doorway, the sky behind him bruised with twilight, and wondered if this was an ending, or the first flicker of a new beginning. I didn't expect it to go this far, but I wasn't ready to lose everything. I stepped back from the threshold to let him in, but Aaron didn't move. He stood there in the doorway, shifting his weight, arms folded across his chest, like a boy trying to shield himself from the cold. His eyes, so much like his father's, searched my face, for something I wasn't sure I could give. Permission, maybe. Or reassurance. I had neither. "I didn't think it would come to this," he said finally. Neither did I. The words hovered, brittle and unfinished. I sat down on the bench by the front door, and motioned for him to sit across from me. He hesitated before sinking into the old wingback chair that had belonged to my grandmother. The silence between us settled like dust in an abandoned room, undisturbed, uncomfortable. "I guess I don't understand," he said, looking down at his hands. "Why you had to go that far." I swallowed hard. "I didn't plan it, Aaron. It wasn't about the dress. It was about everything else." He rubbed the back of his neck, still not meeting my eye. "I know Samantha can be difficult, but I just wanted peace that day. A clean start. Peace at what cost?" I asked. He flinched slightly, and I regretted the sharpness, but only slightly. "You think I haven't noticed how she talks to you?" I continued. "You may have tuned it out, but I was on the receiving end, repeatedly." Aaron looked up. "She's been under pressure. Her mother, her family, they're always watching. It gets to her. And so I'm the acceptable sacrifice." My voice cracked. "You think that's new for—" He exhaled through his nose and leaned back, folding his arms tighter. "I didn't know it was that bad." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "You didn't ask." That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders sank. Then came the shift. His voice dropped. "I didn't just come here to argue." I tilted my head, wary. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about everything. My marriage, what it's become." I watched him carefully. His jaw was tight, but something behind his eyes had softened like a splinter had dislodged, and now the wound could breathe. "I don't know if it's working anymore," he said almost to himself. "I don't know if it ever did." The floor tilted under me. I blinked slowly. "Aaron, I've been trying so hard to make it look good," he continued, his voice cracking. "For her family, for mine, for you, but I'm tired, Mom. And if I'm honest, I've been tired since before the engagement." I leaned back against the wall, stuck. The suitcase behind me felt heavier now, like it carried more than clothes. He looked at me then, really looked. "I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to ask for your help. The other part knows you've already given too much." I wanted to say the right thing, but nothing in my chest felt stable enough to hold it. My heart swelled and broke all at once. I had fought so hard for my own heir, for my own voice. And now here was my son, gasping beside me. Did I reach for him, or let him learn to breathe? I need to make a decision, he said, but I don't want to drag you into something that could break us both. I stared at him, my son unraveling at the seams, and felt the storm rise again. Help him, or help myself. I wasn't sure I could do both. I'd been silent for so long, but for the first time I felt my voice. The morning after Aaron left, I didn't cry. I didn't rage either. Instead, I pulled on my oldest sweater, the one with frayed cuffs and coffee stains, stepped into the yard, and let the cold morning air hit my skin like a baptism. The garden was overgrown, yellowed with the season's turn. I stood there barefoot, earth pressing up through the soles of my feet, and whispered into the quiet, "I'm still here." The words surprised me, not for their content, but for their like they had waited for years to be said out loud. That afternoon, I dug through an old drawer, and found a dusty address book, one I hadn't touched since before smartphones made us lazy and distant. Page after page, familiar names blinked up at me. Nancy R., Bridget S., Diane with the silver laugh. I hesitated, then called Bridget. We hadn't spoken since her retirement party, 7 years ago and half a lifetime apart, but when she picked up and heard my voice, she gasped, "Oh my God, Evelyn, I've been thinking about you." We talked for over an hour about nothing at first, then everything. By the time I hung up, the ache in my chest had shifted, still there but softer, less like loss, more like possibility. That week, I let myself drift gently toward things I'd always put off. A yoga class down the street filled with women in their 60s laughing freely. A painting workshop, where no one asked about grandkids. A book club that didn't care if I hadn't finished the last chapter. The world hadn't closed its doors to me. I had just stopped knocking. And with every new conversation, every awkward introduction, every moment of choosing me over memory, I felt something inside realign. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough to recognize the shape of my own outline again. One night, as I sat journaling by candlelight, nothing profound, just sentences that didn't need permission, I realized something that made my throat tighten. I'd spent my whole life making room for everyone else's story. Now, for the first time, I had space for mine. The guilt lingered. It didn't vanish just because I was brave. There were moments I missed, Aaron's voice, or imagined Samantha's disdain curling into bitterness and growing roots. But I also knew this. I couldn't shrink just to be allowed back in. This healing came with splinters, but I was learning to wear them like armor. I started making plans, small things at first, a trip to Mendocino alone, a new chair for the sunroom I never sat in, a recipe from a cookbook I'd bought 10 years ago and never opened. But each choice stitched another piece of me back together. One morning, as I was rearranging bookshelves and humming to myself, the phone rang. The screen flashed a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. "Is this Evelyn Harper?" the voice asked. Female, clear, warm. "Yes," I replied, cautious. "This is Linda Martin. I run the Story Heard podcast. You were recommended by someone who attended the empowerment event last month." My heart skipped. "We'd love to feature your story in a series we're doing on women rewriting their narrative. Would you be willing to speak with us?" I blinked, stunned into silence. Not Samantha's story, not Aaron's, not my past as someone's wife or someone's mother. Mine. I stared at the phone, breath held, the garden light glowing through the windows like quiet applause. Maybe, just maybe, this was how new lives began, not with noise but with a yes. Aaron had been silent for so long, but now his anger finally broke through. It was dusk when Aaron showed up again. No warning this time, just the sound of gravel crunching beneath his tires, followed by the slow creak of the gate as he let himself through. I was in the backyard, pruning the last of the hydrangeas, gloves muddy and sleeves rolled past my elbow. I didn't rise when I saw him, just waited, clippers in hand, silence between us like old furniture that hadn't been moved in years. He walked over and sat heavily on the wooden bench, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. For a long time, neither of us said a word. Finally he let out a breath. "She changed the locks." I didn't flinch. I set the clippers down on the table beside me and slipped the gloves off one finger at a time. "I didn't even know," he continued. eyes still on the ground. Came home from work to grab some things and my key didn't work. I sat beside him, close but not touching. Did she tell you why? She said I betrayed her, by not cutting you off, by not protecting her from the drama. He laughed bitterly, like I'm some kind of security guard. I stayed quiet, let him fill the space with whatever he needed to say. I keep wondering, he said slowly, if I did this, if I broke it all. He finally turned to me and there was something wild in his eyes. Hurt, yes, but more than that, a kind of panic. Like he'd finally looked up and realized how lost he really was. I tried to make it work, Mom. I really did. His voice cracked, but it's like every time I spoke she heard something else. Like she was always waiting for me to fail. My throat tightened. She'd say things like, you don't lead, or your mom still pulls your strings. I started second-guessing myself in every room. I reached for his hand, not to comfort, but to steady. And then you threw that dress out, he said softer now, and I realized you'd finally done something I was too afraid to do. That surprised me. He shook his head. You chose yourself. And I don't even know what that feels like. I leaned back, letting his words settle. There's a cost to choosing yourself, I said. You lose things, but what you gain, I exhaled. You can breathe again. He nodded slowly, as if the idea had never seemed possible before. I want to leave her, he said, but I don't know how to do it without ruining everything. Then don't ruin it, I said. End it if it must end, but don't destroy it just to make a point. You don't owe her vengeance. You owe yourself peace. He looked at me and I saw the boy he used to be, the one who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares begging me to tell him what was real. I don't want to be like Dad, he whispered. You're not. He was silent. Finally he asked, will you help me figure this out? My chest ached. The impulse to protect, to guide, to fix it surged like it always had. But this time I recognized it for what it was. A trap. I'll stand beside you, I said, but I won't walk it for you. His brow furrowed. I'm here, Aaron, but you have to make the decision. You have to take the first step. He nodded, slowly, then looked away. The sun dipped below the trees, and shadows crept along the edge of the garden. Aaron turned back toward me, his voice barely above a whisper. But what if I don't know where to begin? I never expected to be in this position. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to break the pattern. Dawn light filtered through my curtains as I stirred my tea, and it was more than caffeine pulling me awake that morning. It was the weight of everything unraveling and reweaving itself inside me. I'd been thinking about that evening with Aaron, how he looked at me lost, hopeful, scared. In that moment, I realized the transformation I'd begun wasn't just my own. It was rippling outward, carrying him, our family, whatever remained of it. The house was quiet, just the hum of the kettle. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly, my mind weaving through the last few weeks, the dress in the dumpster, Samantha's fury, Aaron's confession, the fallout, the freedom, the fracture, and through it all, me standing. I set my mug down and wandered into the hallway to find my reflection. My face looked older, sure, but something in my eyes was alive again. I remembered the girl I used to be before motherhood swallowed every other identity whole, the one who carried notebooks full of poems, daydreams, bold plans. Where she had gone I wasn't sure, but I knew she was still here, just waiting. I moved to the kitchen and opened my planner. On one side were reminders, groceries, dentist, book club. On the other, 4 words written in pencil across the top: self, care, boundaries, purpose. They felt revolutionary. I thought of Samantha. All this time I'd believed peace meant pleasing her, staying small so she felt safe. But peace born of suppression isn't peace. It's silence wearing a smile, and I could no longer wear it. My phone buzzed. Messages from new friends I'd made at yoga, invitations to a wine and words gathering, a reminder that I'd promised to pick up a canvas tomorrow, moments of me, not me in relation to someone else. The garden outside my window caught my eye, blooming daisies and wild mint edging the walkway. I poured my tea into a thermos and stepped outside, where the morning had a scent of possibility. I walked slowly across the lawn toward the neighbor's fence, greeting the day with a nod. This land had been my refuge long before any wedding, before drama and decisions and divorces. It was quiet now, and so was I. The steady kind of quiet that wasn't empty. Later, I settled at my desk and pulled out the letter I'd drafted, sentences that sketched the edges of who I was becoming. I paused at one line, "Stand firm, but stay open." I underlined it. Aaron's words echoed. What if I don't know where to begin? I realized then that parenting beyond childhood didn't mean fixing every wrong. It meant guiding him into his own choices, loving him enough to let go, but strong enough to say, "I'll stand beside you." A decision took shape. I lifted my phone and scrolled to Samantha's number, thumb hovering. I felt the familiar knot of dread and security, but under it, a new pulse conviction. I typed, "Samantha, would you meet me this afternoon at the cafe on Maple? I'd like to talk for both our sakes." I hit send before doubt could whisper. What if she says no? Then I took a deep breath. I felt the tremor of first steps, unsteady, essential. Around midday, I packed up a small notebook and stepped out again, cell phone in hand, boots crunching on gravel. I thought of Daisy's blooms, thought of strong women in books I'd loved, thought of the script I'd tossed away when people told me to be quieter. And now I was rewriting it. I closed the front door behind me and saw Samantha waiting at a small wooden table outside the cafe. No applause, no applause. I only needed this: two women who had walked a long way to this very moment, sitting across from each other at a chance for clarity. She thought she could control everything. But today I was ready to take back control. Samantha sat across from me under the little awning of Maple Cafe, face set and pale in the afternoon light. The steam from her latte curled like a warning. "I'm surprised you asked," she began, voice measured. "What is this, some kind of damage control?" I folded my hands. "It's a conversation," I said softly. She rounded her eyes, sharp. "A conversation? You've already torn everything down. My wedding, my marriage, my family. Now you want to sit and talk." Her words cut, but I breathed, calm. "I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to understand and be understood." She leaned forward. "You humiliated me, publicly. You made us look like fools." I held her gaze. "I didn't exist in those rooms." I was silenced. I stood up, not to shame you, but to free myself. Samantha's jaw clenched. She pressed her hand to the table, nails digging grooves. "You think this gives you power? You think you're the victim?" I shook my head. "No, I'm just claiming my voice." A waiter passed between us, but we ignored him. A tension electric enough to warm the chill around us. Samantha's voice shook. "If this continues, you'll lose Aaron. I'll make sure of it." A chill peeled across me. The threat wasn't subtle. I exhaled. "Is that supposed to scare me?" My voice didn't waver. "He'll decide." Her eyes narrowed, hurt and fury warring. "Don't be naive. I control his happiness. I can make him choose me over you." I paused, remembered Aaron's tired eyes in the garden. "He is not yours to control." She laughed, bitter small. "You think you're above it all? Above me?" "I think I'm awake," I replied. "I'm done with hiding." Samantha's hand slammed down with authority that echoed across the sidewalk. "You don't get to decide this. I built this family. I married your son." Her voice cracked. I saw the collapse behind her posture. I reached across the table, placing a hand firmly on hers. "You never had to. You could have chosen peace too. But you chose fear." She jerked her hand back. "Don't patronize me." She glanced around, lower voice. "You've opened Pandora's box, Evelyn. You'll regret this." A spark in her eyes, a promise of retaliation. I tipped forward. "If regret means me living my own life, I'll carry it willingly." She stood abruptly, napkin floating down from her grasp. "This is far from over." I nodded. Rose too. "I know." The cafe's hum felt distant. Her heels tapped across the brick. Samantha paused at the door, looking back one last time, eyes flicking with a storm held in check. As she disappeared into the street, I felt the tension drop, but also sensed the battlefield had shifted, and I was ready. I thought I'd won, but the cost of my freedom was higher than I imagined. The days after Maple Cafe felt suspended. The sky remained endless and blue, but between the walls of my home, A quiet war I could taste the tension in the air, sharp as vinegar, every time I passed the entryway, expecting confrontation that didn't come. I poured coffee in the mornings, listening for doors. I caught fleeting glimpses of Aaron's truck in the driveway, sometimes gone before I could meet his eye. Samantha, gone entirely. The wedding house was silent, as if holding its breath. On a Thursday afternoon, my phone vibrated with a message from Aaron. "Mom, can we talk?" My heart clenched. I texted back, "I'm here, whenever you're ready." He arrived after sunset, steps deliberate, gaze distant. We sat on the porch swing, heads bowed against the twilight. Cicadas chattered while fireflies drifted. They were mesmerizing in their persistence, reminding me that life continues even when everything seems still. He started quietly. "Samantha and I, we're unraveling. We thought things would settle, but nothing does." His voice broke, brittle as old paint. My chest tightened. I thought freedom would feel lighter, more triumphant, but here was a different result. Hard. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted. "I thought marriage meant loyalty. Now I realize I never chose loyalty to her, to us, or to myself." His desperation lit something in me. I squeezed his hand, guilt sharp. My rebellion hadn't freed him. It fractured his world. He asked for my help again, but I hesitated. This time, I wasn't stepping in. It was his story now. I told him, "You can't lean on me the way you used to. I'm learning to stand. You have to too." He nodded, tears glistening. "I know, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done." They didn't sever that night. There were words honest and painful. I realized healing doesn't cut a family's bonds. It stretches them thin. Alone afterward, I wandered the garden. Wind rustled leaves as shadows swayed. Freedom felt bittersweet. Every step away from old patterns carried grief. That morning, I cleared the hall closet, discarded wedding frames, favors, now empty photo albums. I pulled the cardboard box onto the porch. The contents were heavy reminders. Years spent fitting myself into someone else's story. With deliberate hands, I taped the box and labeled it past. I set it by the curb. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about making room. My phone buzzed. It was Linda Martin, the Story Heard podcast host. "Evelyn, thanks for your time. We want to invite you to relocate to our studio town, support housing, a platform build-out. If you're open to it." I stared at the message. A life draft unrolled before me. A long-term start, away from fractured family ties, but also distance from the ones I still loved. I sank onto the porch swing, twilight folding around me. The wind turned the box's corner, exposing past to the cooling night. I realized freedom isn't peace without consequence. It's a threshold. Beyond it, you pay for every step. Aaron appeared in the garden path, silhouetted. He paused at the gate. "Mom," he began softly. I held his gaze. I was at a crossroad. Continue the fight for what remained of my family ties, repairing what weeks of conflict had strained, or walk a new path, one I'd chosen entirely for me. The night deepened around us as the box hovered between us and opportunity glowed on my phone screen. I wondered, which way forward would I choose? I had to find a way to heal, not just for me, but for my family. The early morning light slipped softly through the curtains as I made tea, and for the first time in weeks I felt steady. The box labeled past sat on the porch, but I was inside, moving forward. I'd made my choice. Now it was time to build what came next. My phone vibrated with a message from Aaron. "Can we start over together?" I paused, letting the words settle in. Together sounded like a promise. I typed back, "Let's talk this afternoon, at our table." He arrived hours later, shoulders lighter than before. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. No suits, no tension, just mother and son. I poured them both tea. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what you said, about balance, and I realized I was offering pieces of myself, not the whole." I nodded. "Healing doesn't mean going back. It means paying attention." He reached for my hand. "I want to rebuild, but I don't want you to disappear again." My throat warmed. "I don't plan to. I intend to stay, with boundaries." We sketched small steps together, weekly check-ins, a walk in the garden, invitation to his parenting class when they're ready for a baby. But he also promised space. He understood my life mattered too. Days later, Samantha sent a text, "Happy belated Mother's Day. Let's meet." It was neutral, not warm, but it was there. I considered declining. Then I thought about what peace looked like. Not erasure, not silence, but respect. I replied, "Yes, let's meet." For a fresh start, we met at a park bench. Morning sun raking the grass. Samantha looked cautious, her posture guarded. She spoke first, voice low. "I saw how you and Aaron talked. I want that for all of us." I recognized the hesitancy. "I want that too." I said, "I don't want to erase the past, but I want something better." She nodded. "I'm sorry for how it got so ugly." The words came slow but real. I felt threatened. I felt displaced. "And you did displacement first," I replied gently. "But now there's room for something different." She exhaled. "I can learn that. I need to." We agreed to share decisions, upcoming holidays, family gatherings, not forced unity, but respect. Over the next week, the family rhythm shifted. At dinner, I joined Aaron and let him pour wine. Samantha offered me the first choice of sides. They weren't grand gestures, but small, real. In the evenings, I resumed my painting class. On the weekends, I hosted brunch in the garden. Family members trickled in. Aaron stopped by to bring fresh croissant. Samantha offered gardening help, quietly, no edge, no judgment. I felt tension ease, but something else stirred, a quiet pride. I wasn't a fixture in service. I was an equal participant. My voice was present, my boundaries held, and love, real love, breathed between us. One afternoon, Lily and I sat pruning spring blooms. She looked at me over the clippers. "You seem happy, Mom." I paused, hands in soil. "I am. I love them, both of them, but I also love who I am now." She smiled, handing me a sprig of lavender. "That's good." I held it to my nose, inhaling. "It's more than good, it's peace." The phone buzzed again. This time, it was an event invitation, a community gathering, honoring mothers who've redefined legacy. I'd been nominated. Someone else saw my story, felt it matter. I breathed in the scent of lavender, garden warmth, pressing in, and thought about together, how fragile but human it was. That evening, as the sky turned pink, Aaron called, "Hey Mom, can we start over, together?" I looked at the phone, at the garden, at the peace I'd worked to create, and this time, I didn't hesitate. I smiled, tapped a reply, and watched the lavender petals drift in the last light, each one a small rebirth. He told me to stay in the kitchen, but today, I'm the one holding the key to our future. The garden bloomed in hues of late spring. As I stepped onto the back porch, inhaling the softness of jasmine at dawn, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug, peppermint tea. This morning, steady and warm. I rarely carried such calm now without grounding myself. But peace had come, slowly and by choice. After breakfast, I strolled back inside, the kitchen light spilling onto the hardwood, like a promise. Aaron appeared at the doorway, holding a blueprint in one hand, and a hopeful smile in the other. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied, resting my mug down. I watched him unfold the page. It was a sketch of a new layout for his condo. Simple changes, more light, better flow, room for connection. He looked at me. "I'm rebuilding, Mom, and I want your help with color, layout, but also with how to live again." I felt something bloom inside me, quiet pride, fierce love. "I'd like that." Over the next hour, we moved living room furniture and chose paint swatch. He paused by a wall, where I'd hung an old family photo, him at 5, dirt smudged and laughing. He traced its frame softly. "I want us to build something new. Together." I nodded. "Me too." Later that afternoon, Samantha dropped by, carrying a tray of cookies. She'd dressed simply, denim, a white blouse, and her eyes softened. "I made your favorites," she said, placing the tray on the counter. I smiled at both of them. What began as a tense arrangement had shifted. "Thank you." She touched my arm gently. "I'm still learning how to be part of this family with respect." Her voice wavered in a different place now, earnest, not defensive. The three of us stood in unfamiliar togetherness. No grand gestures, just small, honest steps. Samantha pointed to a cookie. "Salted caramel. Your favorite, right?" How had she remembered? I realized it didn't matter. What mattered was memory, thoughtfulness, inclusion. As the afternoon light softened, I retreated to the garden with Samantha at my side. We pulled weeds from the lavender plot, working in quiet companionship. Later she asked softly, "Thank you for giving me space." I wiped sweat from my forehead and shook my head. "Thank you for showing me grace in return." In the days that followed, family dinners resumed, but softly. No awkward toasts, no overtures, just an atmosphere of mutual care. Aaron called me into his new home. He wanted me to arrange the kitchen shelving, because it needs a mother's hand. I placed spice jars and recipe cards, smiling because I had space to manage, not shape to help, not serve. One evening, I opened an email from the community center. Evelyn Harper, keynote speaker for Legacy Circle, celebrating women who reclaim their voice. My breath caught. I pictured stepping behind a podium, holding words not others but mine. I paused and thought of the woman who had walked away from the dumpster that day, changed forever, of the lawsuits, the dress, the wrenching conversations, of every moment I didn't shrink, didn't disappear. Now, I had choice, my choice. That night, Lily and I sat beneath the stars on the back porch swing, cold lemonade in hand. She leaned her head against my shoulder and whispered, "You finally got your voice, Mom." I kissed her forehead. "I found it, dear. And now I speak." She smiled. "And now everyone listens." Moonlight pooled over the garden. I looked out at flowers nodding in the breeze and the soft glow from Aaron's condo across the lawn. Samantha's silhouette appeared by the window, turning to wave. I waved back. No scripts, no expectations, just a family forging a new shape. Clutching my phone, I typed a reply to the email. "I would be honored," and then paused, because this wasn't just an invitation, it was a confirmation. I had chosen something else for myself. I inhaled deeply, feeling the thread of my journey pull tight from silence to sound, from guilt to grace, from erased to essential. And as I looked up at the sky above the lavender and jasmine, I stopped expecting applause, because now I held the key, not to someone else's future, but to my own.